All right, everybody. My name is JP Hunt. I'm a co-founder here at InkSoft, and it is my pleasure to present to you today really a strategy, a very simple strategy for making your spiritwear sales campaigns high impact, and of course, leverage all the potential, revenue opportunity that's available. Now, I chose to really dig into this topic because spiritwear sales opportunities this year are unlike years of past. And so I think that there's some new opportunities. I also think there's been a bit of trepidation and anxiety over what would back to school look like for apparel decorators, given that represents such a majority of revenue in a year. So with that said, I think that there's actually a lot of upside here, so long as you have the right strategy, tools, and tactics. So my hope today is to unveil and really give you a clear sense of how you can make the most of spiritwear sales campaigns this year. So in terms of housekeeping, what I'll do is I'm going to go through a quick sort of presentation. I know nobody likes to be in the world of a deck and a presentation. I just want to make sure that I'm communicating at a high level, but then we'll sort of get out of the presentation. We'll actually get into the technology, and I'll give you some keen insights. We'll get more practical. All right, and I will encourage you, as last matter of housekeeping, if you have any questions or comments, please use the Q&A function in the Zoom control panel. Input your questions, and I'll do my best at the very end to come back and do some Q&A. All right, so let's get underway here. So again, you're joining us for a spiritwear webinar where we expect to unveil how this can be your sales campaign of the year. So really excited to present. All right, so in terms of our agenda, we'll kind of lay up exactly what I hope to achieve today. First, I want to give you a definition and really give you a more meaningful look at what spiritwear really means. Now, we all know what spiritwear is, but I don't think we've ever done a deep exploration and really looked at the semantics and really explored what spiritwear actually represents to consumers. And the reason this is so important to do this deep dive, because you need to understand the value, the upside in relationship to what's going on in our current state. So I'll give you some examples and some meaning there. The next thing I want to do that's sort of related is I'm going to walk you through the spiritwear value matrix. As any business, you need to understand really the pain, the problem, challenges that your target audience, is facing. And then you need to really be able to clearly understand the value you bring in terms of solving that pain, those problems, and addressing any sort of challenges and opportunities. So we'll go through a quick view at what the challenges look like and how you can come in and be the hero. Next thing, we'll take a look at the economics of spiritwear, which I think is actually pretty meaningful, and it should give you a lot of motivation and confidence to really engage in this sales campaign. And really, we're going to conclude today's webinar with sort of a deep dive into the spiritwear go-to-market strategy. Now, of course, go-to-market means you're going to combine sales and marketing and leverage your competitive advantage to maximize your sales opportunities. And what I'll do in sort of concert, with that is we'll talk about online spiritwear stores and some of the best practices, things to be aware of in terms of the transactional side of the campaign we're going to unveil today. And lastly, I want to really make sure everybody has access and understands how to take advantage of the free spiritwear marketing kit that we've produced in support of this go-to-market strategy. All right. So I just recorded a podcast, the most recent InkSoft Sell More Merch podcast. And I'll do a quick plug for this podcast. If you have not yet subscribed, wherever you listen to podcasts, whatever podcast catcher or app you use, just seek InkSoft or conversely Sell More Merch and subscribe to the InkSoft podcast. And the last podcast I recorded was on bottom line up front. So this is a very simple marketing technique that I encourage you to use, and you'll learn all about it in that podcast. But effectively, I've been in a habit of using bottom line up front to explain exactly the value of what I'm about to present. So, I need to practice the things that I'm preaching. So in this case, let me share with you my real intention for today is to really communicate the value that you provide to your local community. And for those of you that were aware of the Here for Good local community fundraising movement that happened at the onset of COVID, we really suspect this is sort of the next iteration, the next logical, step as it relates to serving your local community. You're going to do it through spiritwear and through local schools and education organizations. So here's my bottom line up front. Again, this is sort of my main goal for today, the main thing I want to communicate. sort of my thesis is spiritware is absolutely vital to giving students, school faculty, families, parents, really the community, which represents all of those people. It's giving them the greater sense of community and all the positive things that come along with that this year. And of course, a sense of identity and belonging and support. All of those positive things are needed now more than ever, given school is disrupted, communities are disrupted. I'll share some personal examples from my experience. I have 4 kids who are doing remote schooling at home, and I have my wife, bless her soul, has had to navigate through these challenging times. So I have experienced, the same thing that your communities and likely you are experiencing as well. So I hope to bring in that perspective. So with that said, again, my bottom line up front is your expertise, your capabilities are needed now more than ever to serve these school communities, and we'll show you some unique ways to achieve that. So before we get into, again, the strategy and how we go to market and how we really leverage this opportunity, again, I wanted to share a little insight into what spiritware really means. So let's do a quick little story tell here, and we'll use some visuals to help guide us along here. So on screen here, I'm displaying the Manchester United Soccer Club logo. And if you're from Great Britain, the United Kingdom at large, you may be a fan of Manchester United, very popular, again, football organization. I've probably suggested this once or twice on a podcast or in maybe even webinars, but I read a book a long time ago called How Soccer Explains the World. And it's an amazing read, especially for those of us in this industry, because it really talks about the nature of tribal and how tribal identity, logos, graphics, colors, they go on to represent tribes, right? And how important that can be. So here's an example of, as we talk about spiritware and how meaningful it is, we have an identity, we have colors, we have iconography at play, and look how that translates to a wide audience, right? So if you were to look at a live soccer match where Manchester United is playing, you're going to see soccer hooligans, you're going to see these, really, passionate fans, representing their team and their colors. And that really creates a sense of community, identity, belonging, a common purpose. So let's just look to, again, examples of how spirit, morale, again, the sense of community is being invoked through the use of logos and branding and identity. So spiritware is much more than just, school, attire or apparel. There's some subtleties to that. And again, that's more meaningful now more than ever, given that these school communities are disrupted. And again, a personal sort of anecdote here, my kids are initially, they were really excited about not having to go to school, but now they really miss their friends. They miss PE, they miss sports, they miss engaging with friends and, all the camaraderie that goes along with that, right? So spiritware was meaningful before, but given the disruption of communities, it's more important now than ever. And let's take a look at the data, right? So I'm giving you an example here, one that's pretty obvious, but let's take a look at what the data says about, high levels of spirit, which, sort of comports right to school pride. So the reality is the data says about high levels of school spirit and school pride, those students that express, again, these high levels of school pride and school spirit, they have better academic performance, right? So that's important. If you can be a business that's helping to promote school pride and school spirit, and that can translate into better academic performance, well, that's certainly doing good in your community, right? The reality is students that have, again, higher levels of school spirit, they're simply more engaged in their community. So they're more engaged socially, whether it be in school clubs, school organizations, and they're also more engaged with their greater community, whether it be philanthropic or, maybe volunteering their time in the local community. So of course, this again is a reflection of you and your business and the goodwill and the value you can create. The other sort of meaningful data point here is students with a high level of spirit and pride report that they're just happier, right? So if I have a sense of community and there's a sense of well-being and again, a sense of belonging and connectedness and a common purpose and identity, that does translate directly to being happier, right? So with that said, spiritware can be a force there. Now, here's 2 other meaningful data points. One, 92% of principals, believe that high levels of school spirit and school pride is directly correlated with higher student achievement. So that just reinforces the first point that I shared with you, as it relates to better academic performance. So school administrators are actively communicating within their peer groups to say, listen, we have to be focused on creating school pride and boosting school spirit, because the data is very clear that goes on to resulting in higher student achievement. And of course, that's something that every superintendent, every principal, every educator is focused on delivering as their mission and their vision. And the last data point to express here, to reinforce everything we've mentioned thusly, 95% of high school principals, again, who feel that school spirit is reinforced, it's activated. It's activated when school spirit wear or branded logo wear is on display. So again, think of every school. They have colors, they have a logo, they have iconography, they have an identity. And look, this stuff has been in play forever, right? So nothing new. Look at sort of the Letterman jacket, right? Look at each subgroup within a school, the chess club, the science club, the math club, the debate team. All of these groups have not only their common identity, the school mascot, school color, school theme, but then they also have sub-branding to represent maybe their group. So again, there's nothing new here, but I think it's important that we all understand what's at play here and how to best leverage it as we go to market. And again, that's coming up soon in our presentation. So one other thing I made a point in our agenda that we really need to have a clear understanding. How can you have the confidence in going to market and selling and positioning and messaging if you don't really understand the value you're really delivering? And again, the value proposition is much different now in the face of COVID, in the face of a global pandemic, in the face of disruption of school as we know it. Spirit wear is a different consideration now, right? It's more important. So let's look at the pain points that the school community, which again is parents, it's school faculty and staff, it's students, and then there's probably some tangential, there's donors, there's alumni, there's other folks in the community that care, that volunteer their time and effort, that raise money. So let's look at the first, sort of obvious thing, right? And again, I'll just share my personal example, as a parent, a co-parent alongside my wife, there's been a lot of trepidation. There's been fear, there's uncertainty, there's not clarity of science and information, and this overwhelming sort of anxiety, right? Like, what's going to happen with our kids if they're not actively engaged in sports and all the things that they love and know, to maintain some level of normalcy. So this is a shared, sense of, again, emotion amongst, parents at large and even students, right? So again, my children were very excited initially about staying home, and that, that sense of enthusiasm quickly waned as they realized there's a lot of downside to not being in a traditional school environment. Now, the next consideration, which I've already mentioned, but connectedness through community is really disrupted right now. Again, sports are disrupted and being canceled. Just the routine of getting up, preparing for school, engaging in school, downshifting from school to the evening. I mean, all that's disrupted now, right? Oftentimes it's like, what day is it? What day of the week? Do we have school tomorrow? So again, connectedness is just really sort of at large is just really disrupted right now. And that, again, impacts the sense of spirit and community. Now, lastly, I think the thing that parents and the school staff at large are really hyper concerned about is student well-being. I mean, their number one regard is for the welfare of their students, right? And so we're going to leverage this as we go to market and really help tell the story of why spirit wear is so critical right now, because it's going to help with student well-being. It's going to connect them as things are disrupted. And there's some really playful ways we can do that through branded product, through very unique messaging graphically, through imprint. And we'll dig into that in a moment's time. Now here, that's sort of the pain points, right? The things you need to be hyper aware of. Again, some of these are obvious, but just need to make sure that we have a common understanding. So let's talk about really what is the branded spirit wear value sort of proposition here. How are you going to go to market? What is your key marketing messaging that's distinct, that's clear, that's meaningful? And the reality is, with your spirit wear program this year, it's all about delivering joy and positive emotions by creating a sense of belonging, connectivity, a sense of community and identity. And we're going to do that through amazing branded products. And in this case, I use an uncouth word, kick-ass, but you have to choose what sort of marketing position you want to take. But the reality is you're going to do something really meaningful, right? You're going to deliver joy, which not many companies can achieve. And you're going to do it in a very unique way through creativity. And we'll get into all of that as we progress through our web education today. Okay, so I want to make sure that we all understand, the economics of what's at play here. And there's actually sort of two economic market forces operating here. And I'll save the second as we progress and we start talking about the product mix as part of our go-to-market strategy. Now, the first consideration here is consider this. And for those of you that are parents, you probably understand that as back to school approaches, there's this back to school retail traditional shopping, right? To go and outfit kids and prepare them with new, standard apparel for the school year. Oftentimes that's a very expensive proposition. It's a thing. It's a big thing in retail America and retail marketing, right? So for standard traditional retailers, they rely on back to school sales. That's a great influx of revenue. They prepare for it well in advance with inventory and with design and all the things that go into delivering to retail. But the reality is, given that's totally disrupted, parents aren't going out and doing traditional retail back to school shopping because largely across America and mostly in the globe, back to school is disrupted, right? So with that said, consider that there's potentially a higher sort of discretionary spend and maybe a higher budget that's available right now, given that budget that might have been allocated before is not in use. Now, at the same time, if you correlate this, and believe me, not everything's rosy, not every household is benefiting from the economics of the pandemic, right? Some folks have lost jobs. But I think largely speaking, the data informs us that, consumer debt has actually reduced. So consumers have been more critical of maybe a certain discretionary spend. So I think the point here is parents didn't do traditional back to school shopping. They may have a budget surplus that they can apply to branded spirit wear. So a pro tip that I want to put on offer here that you might consider when you're launching your online spirit wear stores or you're configuring your final marketing messaging, maybe make the point that you're offering bundles or kits. Maybe you're going to include a few different colorways of the t-shirt. Maybe the bundle includes a t-shirt, a long sleeve, a hoodie, a face mask. It's a total bundle, right? So, think that parents might have potentially a bit more spending power. So think about designing your marketing and your offering to maybe include that, right? You want to make those products available individually and a la carte, but maybe think about creating a special incentive to bond those together. So just one quick, sort of look at economics, but there's a more meaningful look that really, I think, reinforces the notion of going to market with e-commerce and using online stores to support your spirit wear, but also the long-term look at e-commerce in our industry at large. And I'll hold that to the end. Okay, so of course, as we look to designing our go-to-market strategy, one of the big questions we have to answer is, well, who are we going to sell to? And the way I like to look at this is, who is the primary audience? And of course, as we look to spirit wear, well, oftentimes the greatest single consumer of branded, logoized spirit wear is, of course, going to be students, the student body, right? And again, we need to dig deeper and to say, okay, well, students are typically going to be unified with a standard, unified or uniform, maybe spirit wear shirt, right? And maybe there's a few different themes to choose from. But again, we can't lose focus that there's a lot of sub groups here that also want, to reinforce their sense of community, right? So again, my son Aiden plays hockey, and so that's meaningful to him, and that community is important to him. So he might be an advocate of buying a spirit wear shirt just to represent the school at large, but also wearing something that connects him to his pursuits, right? So again, don't lose focus of that as you're planning your path to action here. So again, as we look to the primary target market, it's going to be students, but taking consideration maybe clubs or sport organizations that that you can leverage and make available. Now, the secondary target audience here is going to be school staff. So my sister-in-law is an educator. She's a teacher, and she had similar fears and trepidations about her students and her, the wellness of her students. She has 2 children with a third inborn or on the way. And she had the same concerns about, is it safe to be back to school? Concern for her own children. So as a staff member of a school, again, she has those trepidations, those anxieties and fears. And, the school staff also wants to be unified with their school community, right? So think about the sort of the teacher's lounge at school. That's meaningful. That's where the faculty and staff convene, and they have that sense of community. They align with the principal to invoke the school mission. So can you make on offer products that speak directly to faculty and staff members? You got to be conscientious of that as well. Okay, and the tertiary or third, sort of target audience as it relates to spiritware is, of course, parents, right? And my wife and I are very active in our school community, so to where branded products that speak to the way I identify, meaning Sandpiper dad, Sandpiper mom, that's an important consideration as well. So really, there's sort of like three general sales targets here, and you need to be conscientious of all of those. So I think sort of a key takeaway here that we need to unpack as you're considering these audiences, you want to ensure that you have the right product mix, that's going to excite these different, groups. Sandpiper mom might have different interests than, say, Sandpiper dad, and then can contrast that with, staff versus students. So be aware of the product mix you're making on offer. And I'm going to do a quick shout out to our friends at SNS Activewear, who helped us generate, what really, they created a recommended go-to-market, recommended products, right, in different categories. So different price levels, different quality levels, products that have, they're trending and popular according to their data, and also products that have really solid inventory levels right now, so you can rely on them. So I'll show you where you can access that product recommendations. It's certainly something to review and definitely consider, because it's coming from, again, SNS Activewear, who are experts as it relates to blank garments. So take that into account. The other thing to consider here is, again, graphical theme and message that will speak to these different tribes or subgroups, right? So think, could you have a standard design that's going to cater to everybody? Could you have a design that might speak to the PTO or the parent group, or, again, in the examples I've given, Sandpiper mom, Sandpiper dad? So again, be conscientious of the product mix you're making on offer, and then be conscientious, does the design, the graphical themes, do they align with those products and the audience that they're designed to reach? Okay, so now it's time to transition into the meaningful stuff, the real fun part. Now that we have a bunch of context established and we have a sort of a common understanding, let's talk about the go-to-market strategy. Go-to-market has been a new term that's kind of, well, it's not a new term, but it seems like it's gained a lot of popularity in the past couple of years, right? And so just to make sure everybody understands what I mean by go-to-market strategy, really it's the way a company brings product to market at large, right? And so typically that's going to be a plan that's going to outline the target audience, the marketing plan, the sales strategy. So really go-to-market just means, okay, great, we have skills, capabilities, and expertise as it relates to decorated products. We see a sales opportunity, which is spiritware. It's widely available. How do we, connect the dots? How do we, get to our end state, which is maximizing revenue and profit at the same time, satisfying customers and making it a success all around. So with that said, as we start to think about a go-to-market strategy, there's a few things that are super important to really consider here. Number one is competitive advantage. So, the reality is you need to ask the question, well, how am I going to leverage spiritware when I know my competitors are likely competing for that same business? How do I level up, up level to make sure that I have a more attractive value proposition? I have a more attractive offering at large. And so, I'm going to go over a few specific points here that I think that can be meaningful. The first thing to consider is strategic messaging, and we've provided that for you. And we'll do a review before we conclude today's webinar about how to take advantage of the free Spiritware Marketing Kit, which is professionally copywritten marketing content that's turnkey. You can copy, paste, and post professional social media messages, send professional email messages, website copy, you name it. So there's a lot to talk about there, so I'm not going to go fully into it. But the reality is, if you're going to go to market, you need a marketing plan and you need marketing messaging. So being strategic with communicating to parents, being strategic to communicate with school staff, well, that turnkey kit we've produced provides both. So you're going to make it really easy to make sure that the school staff and school decision makers and gatekeepers clearly understand your value proposition and see how it's way more attractive than your competitors. And then you're going to give them marketing messaging that removes any friction or labor that they have, where they can easily communicate to the parents and the end purchasers about why spiritware is so valuable and how this program is operating. We even provide options for even introducing fundraising into the Storytell. So we'll go through that as we graduate through our web training today. So the next thing to consider as part of your competitive advantage must be free and turnkey online spiritware stores. So part of your value prop and part of your competitive advantage is going to be putting really on display and very clearly that we are going to make your spirit wear engagement a total success and totally easy because we offer a free and turnkey online spirit wear program. And you may choose to introduce fundraising as a value add. That's going to be an option. We think that there's a lot of value and a lot of place for introducing fundraising into your spirit wear strategy. And I can tell you that I received communication from the superintendent of our school district, and there's a big plea to raise money and raise funds to purchase Chromebooks to provide to students that may not have, proper equipment at home to fully, be immersed in the online digital learning. So fundraising is in hot demand now as budgets are being slashed and cut. Budgets are already strained. Now there's new budget demands because all of a sudden there's these new constraints and requirements in order to, again, exercise the mission and the vision of these education institutions, right? So albeit fundraising is not a hard requirement as part of this program, you ought to really carefully consider, leveraging and putting this forward because it provides, again, differentiated value compared to your competitors. The last consideration is thoughtful and curated products as part of your offering. So again, we had the help of SNS Activewear to kind of give you a cheat sheet and give you, a very clear sense of what's trending, what's popular, and what to contemplate as it relates to curated products. But that also, again, goes back to the point, which I'll underscore. If you know that you have an audience and there's different, personas within the audience and they have different preferences, make sure that you're thinking about what product would really be most suitable to X group, and then what graphic or identity or logo would complement that, right? So again, be very thoughtful there to avoid spoilage or waste or missing an opportunity. So as mentioned, we have this back to school spirit wear kit. Again, you're going to fully leverage this as you go to market because it's professionally authored. I would stress that it's your opportunity to to completely modify and fine tune and tweak, make it in your voice. So you're at full will to just use it as a guide and feel free to substitute, modify as you see fit. But there's been a lot of thought, again, from professional copywriters, experts in marketing messaging and marketing copy. So definitely read it and understand it and then make changes that you think would reflect your brand and your identity. And the last consideration is, we're providing with the marketing kit, free graphics. And so we sort of curated a library of graphics from Digital Art Solutions, and I'll give them a shout out as we progress, through the webinar today. But quick shout out to our friends at Digital Art Solutions who put together this free spiritwear, vector-based apparel graphics kit. These are all interactive designs and illustrations that you can use to present concepts as part of your spiritwear offering. So there's marketing messaging that's provided as this go-to-market kit. There is a turnkey graphics library. I mean, there's really no excuses to not, fully leverage this. Okay, so let's make a little bit more progress here, and then we're going to, sort of transition again away from a presentation and into the actual technologies and some more practical insights. Now, I've already made reference here that my wife and I are active in our children's, school community, and I've made mention of Sandpiper, right? So here's the Sandpiper PTO paper order form. So, in years of past, if you're doing a spiritwear program, you might get away with doing an order form. Does it provide the best customer experience? Does it leave sales opportunities on the table because it provides friction? It's clunky. I have to go find my checkbook. It's just a poor customer journey and experience. Well, the answer might be yes, right? You could have gotten away as whatever print shop has been selling to Sandpiper for years. And this is actually a scan of the clunky paper order form that my kids would bring home year over year. I had no idea what garment was on offer because there's not even a preview of the garment and the logo. So with that said, right now, a paper-based order form is not an option because, it's just, again, the traditional spiritwear flow and mix is disrupted because everything has gone visual and virtual. So we've seen a lot of folks, a lot of InkSoft customers go to market early with spiritwear programs, and they use the word virtual spiritwear, remote, because everybody understands exactly what that means. So as we talk about going to market, I'm going to say this now because I'm just going to use in the balance of the webinar, we're going to talk about the best way to go to market is with custom built, unique online spiritwear stores for each of the schools and organizations you are going to sell to. There's not going to be the in-store book school. There's not going to be in-store distribution or pickup. You need to think in context of today's economy and today's construct, which is e-commerce and shipping, right? So that's the way we're going to actually go to market technically, is we're going to deliver goods. We're going to deliver upon our marketing messaging and our value prop and our promise. And we're going to do that through e-commerce, which is king right now and will continue to reign. So with that said, that is sort of a quick look at online stores compared to paper order forms. But let me give you a little bit more insight into fundraising, sort of broadly speaking, right? So, fundraising is going to add value to your value proposition. So that's in our marketing messaging. There's 2 versions of all the marketing copy we produced: a standard spiritware delivery, but using the emotions of today's context of why spiritware is more important, given communities disrupted. But if you can come in and say, hey, your organization and your community is likely in need of funds, and we can help, and here's how. So it adds a lot of value. And especially if a principal, a PTO, a parent, a school administrator, a community is making a decision about going with print shop A versus print shop B, who has the most compelling offer? Well, if fundraising is a component of offer B, it's likely offer B is going to win. And again, this has all been on offer and on full display with the Here for Good fundraising campaign. So I'm not going to go into too much depth as it relates to fundraising, because it's sort of commonsensical. But I do want to understand, have you understand, again, some of the key positioning here. Again, clear differentiation between you and your competition or alternatives, but also think about the upside of goodwill generation. As we learned in the Here for Good local community fundraising efforts, where decorators went into their local community and offered fundraising programs to small businesses who were struggling through the initial wave of the pandemic. There's so much community goodwill generation, right? So that's going to be the ability to adopt new accounts in the future. It's going to be free press coverage and local media play, which is going to help promote your brand and your identity, and especially in a favorable, positive context. And then it's spreadable, right? So anything that's positive right now is spreading, given there's so much gloom. So media outlets and people are so happy to share positive, things right now, right? And I also think it reinforces this nature of sort of the difference between a partner and sort of a company that's providing value beyond just a finished product, and then sort of the transactional company who's just interested in the order and they're just interested in monetizing the relationship. And the last opportunity, I've spent a lot of time talking to InkSoft customers, and in light of all the transformations and pivoting that's gone on during COVID. But in particular with PPE, personal protection equipment, and face masks and sanitization products, the report has been emphatically that, hey, JP, people are coming to us because we have these unique products that are in demand right now and that are needed, like face masks, especially logoed face masks, which provides value back to the business. But because we were there to be a hero and support them and not gouge them and help them in a time of need, we were able to get all their other business, all their traditional promotional business, and other decorated apparel type of needs. So think of this and offering fundraising as a way to cultivate future and new sales opportunities. Okay, so it wouldn't be as I've already just mentioned with PPE and face masks. It wouldn't be a complete product story if we didn't talk about going to market with the right product mix. So we've talked about cultivating, being thoughtful and considerate of the audience, the graphical themes that will excite them. But you also need to take into account in your product mix, this is optional but strongly suggested, but think about the health and wellness categories, right? And I think the promotional product industry, traditional promotional product distributors, really embraced PPE. PPE was sort of the promotional product industry's Here for Good, campaign and movement, right? So you should absolutely leverage that because you have client relationships, you have the expertise, the supply chain to deliver on this. So think about, parents, want face masks, they want them for their kids. If you can make those on offer that are branded, that provides a lot of value and utility, right? So think about making that available as part of your product mix. And that's an example of one product that may cater to every consumer that visits that spiritware shop. That's not discriminate of the school staff, the student, the parent, the fundraiser, the booster, the alumni, whatever it might be. And also think about the other category. This is directly referring to promotional products, but think about whether it be branded hand sanitizer stands. As some schooling events may come back online, right? Also consider, there's some really cool new tech devices, right? There's little cases that you can put in a smartphone and it will use UV light to sanitize. So all of these products can be branded. So there's a huge category of health and wellness. Consumers have a heightened concern and awareness over health and wellness. And so they're investing in products that go on to support. So there's, again, if you look at the data, I read something meaningful about the percentage of smokers in the United Kingdom who have quit smoking, given, there's, again, a heightened sense of maintaining one's immune system. So again, we're not advocating to be an opportunist or be nefarious here, but there's a demand for these products. You have the supply chain, the expertise, make them on offer at a reasonable price and a reasonable markup, and position them the right way. And there should be no concern there. Now, the last part of our product mix, and we're going to get out of our presentation here in a moment's time, but I want to talk for a moment. And our friends at SNS Activewear made this clear in the product recommendations that they set forth, which again are in the blog posting that accompanied the Spiritwear marketing kit. But the reality is now comfort and casual is the trending popular sort of product category that you need to be very much focused on leveraging. So as you look to product offering, you should consider and put very clear in your marketing, comfort and casual, right? We learned this with the Here for Good strategy. One of the best practices was to use marketing messaging and use the appropriate product to be able to say, super soft, comfy tee. That's going to be meaningful when it relates to product marketing. And the reality is, if you can, again, as the example I just gave, integrate that into your marketing messaging and your storytell, as folks are remote, quarantined, working from home, operating from home, comfort is the thing right now. And let me give you some real examples of that. I don't want to be sort of just give you an analogy here. But the reality is Lululemon, which of course we all know is the retailer, the brand behind, yoga attire, fitness attire, sort of the casual, brand category, their shares, their stock hit an all-time high simply on the strength and the demand of work from home wear. So let's contrast Lululemon and their success in a really challenging economy with, sort of other retailers, right? And so if you look at Men's Warehouse, you look at Joseph A. Bank, who Men's Warehouse actually acquired. You look at, let's see what other organizations declared bankruptcy through the pandemic. So brand categories and retailers, there's Brooks Brothers, there's J. Crew, Neiman Marcus, Ann Taylor, who also is owned by the same parent company, Lane Bryant, J.C. Penney, True Religion Apparel, Lucky Brand, we all know Lucky Brand, the denim manufacturer and apparel retailer. Lucky Brand, another sort of similar, Lord & Taylor, which is the oldest U.S. department store, which was founded in, 1826. And then, of course, we have Gap, who stopped paying rent on their 2,785 North American retail stores. So all of these organizations are retailers. They obviously sell apparel, but they're traditional retailers, not optimized for the e-commerce experience, fully. At the same time, they oftentimes those brand categories have sort of workwear, formal attire. So the reality is comfort and casual must be prioritized in your go-to-market strategy. So let me first share with you two important resources. So if you go to inksoft.com, I want to make sure everybody has access to the Spiritwear marketing kit. So of course, if you didn't yet access or register for that Spiritwear marketing kit, we pinned it to the very top of inksoft.com. So you can click on Spiritwear, the sales campaign of the year. And here there's an index where you can register and access the free back to school Spiritwear marketing kit. So with that said, once you register, you get immediate access. And we made this available as a view-only Google Doc. And so, of course, you can download immediately this entire document. And we have a bunch of folks that are in here now looking at this document, which is cool. So you can actually go File and choose to download and choose the format, whether PDF or Word doc, if you want to work on this document offline and customize it. So you may choose to do that. Here's a table of contents. And so let me just kind of give you a sense of the anatomy of this marketing copy, right? This is marketing messaging that's professionally developed and produced. So effectively, there's two sort of main categories here. There's turnkey marketing messaging for you, the apparel decorator, the promotional product distributor, the print shop. This is messaging that you can use to send out an email to educate, schools and PTO groups, parents about your spirit wear offering. There's social media messaging. Then there's other versions that integrate fundraising as part of the sort of the value proposition. So you can choose, hey, we're just going to offer a spirit wear program. We're not going to complicate it or add fundraising because it just doesn't make sense for us. Whatever your decision might be. Then there's option A, which is spirit wear and the value of spirit wear and why it's important now. And then there's one that adds fundraising. Now, next, there's a turnkey marketing kit for sort of PTOs, right? Parent-teacher organizations, staff members, people that might be the gatekeepers, decision makers about sort of advancing and then promoting the spirit wear program, right? So it speaks to a large audience. So again, there's an email, sort of message you can use. There's social, and then again, there's the second version, which will implement the fundraising value prop. And there's also call to action messaging that you can take advantage of on your InkSoft stores, in other marketing. And of course, call to action is going to ask shoppers or consumers to take specific action. So definitely dig into those CTAs and integrate those into your messaging. Now, right below that is where you can download a zip file that's going to contain all those really cool, free, premium, apparel-based, design templates and vector illustrations and fonts. So these are spirit wear, back to school, designs that are ready to go. You can customize the colors, the messaging, fine tune them to showcase to your customers, right? To then populate on your online stores. So that's kind of a quick walkthrough of the anatomy of the back to school spirit wear kit. Now, mind you, this is, I think, the 6th or 7th marketing kit we've created. And if you go to the InkSoft blog, there's an index where you can access all of the marketing kits that we've produced. So for different sales opportunities, like promoting to employers, really cool at-home, employee at-home remote swag kits. So imagine, for a lot of businesses, they're concerned about the welfare of their employees, and they want to create morale. In fact, there's a real analog between spirit wear, which is, again, spirit. Just think of the notion of spirit, like boosting spirits, right? The same case can be made for employers who have employees at home, who have vendors and partners, and they have a community that they need to reinforce. So you could run the same playbook, again, the same general strategy, just for a different audience, right? So this structure is the same for all of our marketing kits and will continue to be the same. And we're actually preparing to release some more. So we're really excited about that. So that's the anatomy of the marketing kit, which is going to be, again, a big part of the way you'll go to market. So make sure to register and access that. Now, I want to do sort of a best practice exploration of online spirit wear stores, right? So again, I don't think anybody would disagree that right now in particular, you'd be hard pressed to try to convince any reasonable person that you're going to do spirit wear programs with paper-based order forms more effectively than I could do with e-commerce, right? The reality is nobody wants extra work or labor right now, including staff members. It seems like every day teachers are figuring out new ways to address and adapt to the weirdness of this new reality we're in with back to schooling, right? So they don't want to take on extra labor of distributing order forms and collecting and just being a broker there. Nobody wants extra labor or work. So don't saddle them with labor or work. Make this turnkey and highly deliverable. So with that said, let's do kind of a quick flyby of the things that you need to consider with online stores. Now, of course, you can use any online store framework. We're a bit biased here, but we would advocate, InkSoft is going to give you the advantage because it's built for the industry and it has all the right feature function to execute, the go-to-market strategy that we've laid out. So InkSoft has a fundraising, functionality that's inbuilt into InkSoft. So I can, of course, as I build my fundraising stores quickly using the step-by-step store builder in InkSoft, I can elect to add the fundraising component to the online store. And then I can establish the goal settings for the store. How much money are we trying to raise? What are we committing back to the organization? You ought to be very considerate as well of the marketing messaging as part of the fundraiser. This is where you need to appeal to the emotions. You need to have a very clear call to action of why this is important. And we really came to understand in the clearest possible way how valuable, fundraising is to, apparel decorators and print shops and, of course, promotional product distributors. Here for Good, the campaign that, again, helped our industry, really survive and thrive in a challenging time. I think that put just on full display the notion of how vital fundraising is, not only to your self-interest, which is revenue preservation and production, but most importantly is like serving your local community, right? Which is something most businesses in the local community can't take claim to. So really, again, think about adding the InkSoft fundraising component and putting a clear call to action, really expressing in a clear way the value of the fundraiser and why we need your support and help, and how that help is going to be translated to the school community. Now, one other thing to consider is, as it relates to the componentry of an online store. And again, in InkSoft, our component library is effectively a bunch of purpose-built features that serve a very specific role, right? So fundraising, requires a very unique feature set, right? Positioning products and marketing messaging, they all require their own little dedicated function. Now, one thing I want you to think of as it relates to launching stores is think about, you might have a consumer that happens upon an online store. They respond to marketing. You create awareness and interest, and they react to that. Maybe they have needs. Maybe they're part of other organizations. They have friends that could benefit from this. So one thing to consider, it's infinitely more expensive to acquire new customers. And we've always heard that, right? It's 7 times the cost to acquire a new customer than to maintain one, right? So customer acquisition is a very expensive, a very challenging strategy, right? Now, you should always be concerned with acquiring new customers, of course. But I think, if you look from a pure monetization strategy, you should be focused on how do we extract the most dollars from every sales opportunity we have. And again, not to say that you should be nefarious and there's, but if you design the right product mix, if you consider the right target audience, if you have the right marketing mix, the right, again, overall go-to-market strategy, you're going to be assured that you're going to leverage the most opportunity from that single online store, that single school. So be very concerned with how do we monetize from this current active sales opportunity, but specifically a way to consider lead generation from every online store is you can use the request a quote feature inside of InkSoft's online store platform, where you can add a form and you can place that anywhere you want on your online store. I think it's appropriate maybe right before the header, sort of the last thing somebody will see. But you can call out, hey, does your organization, group, or club, need fundraising? We can help. So call out, something very clear in the heading. Give a little description, maybe in the subtext here. Ask us about our turnkey and free fundraising programs. Request free fundraiser. So this is your opportunity to leverage an existing active sales campaign to harvest new leads, prospective, customers that may have, again, the needs that we discovered today in the value matrix, right? Hey, I'm a part of an organization that really needs a sense of community, and we also need to raise money. So I'd love to take advantage of something very similar to what I just experienced. So I think those are some of the main best practices to contemplate. Be considerate of your product mix. And in this example here, think about accessories like face masks, a cinch bag, headwear. Think about, again, for the student body, and think about maybe making on offer different products, right? As we transition away from t-shirt weather and migrate into fall weather, maybe you can invoke hoodies and long sleeve garments. Again, think about the subgroups, right? Clubs, think about mom, dad, staff, spirit wear, all the different organizations that are vested. And I actually did have an example on this online store of a gator, but I don't know if you folks have been tracking the recent news. I think John Hopkins produced a recent updated study on face coverings and their effectiveness, and they ranked them. And unfortunately, face gaiters, I believe, neck gaiters rather, they came in last because they're generally porous, single ply. So I actually had a neck gaiter as an example here, but I removed it, and I just want to make sure you're aware of that circulating in the news. So be aware of, again, relevant products here. Alrighty, so that covers it as it relates to sort of best practices with an online store. I think the last thing to consider here that I said I would give a shout out at the end But again, actually, it's a company that we acquired in June of last year, Digital Art Solutions, who is still operated as a separate company. And for those of you that are unaware, Digital Art Solutions is the industry leader as it relates to stock art content. So we know a lot of print shops, InkSoft customers, a lot of businesses, they've had disruption or turnover. They've had to furlough employees in the art department. So the reality is, if you need graphic resources to be able to execute and create professional designs that are production ready, I would definitely turn to Digital Art Solutions, in particular, a brand new product, which is called Graphics Builder. And we are going to offer a special incentive if you choose to invest in Graphics Builder. And this is for those that participated in today's webinar. But I'm going to make this special incentive available after we stop recording today. We'll get into this in our Q&A. But again, this is all vector-based, production-ready graphics that come in, of course, AI, file format, Corel. There's also some really cool embroidery content and rhinestone content. So for multi-decoration or different ways to execute, again, to the point I made earlier about curating, maybe for Sandpiper Mom, maybe Sandpiper Mom would prefer a cool rhinestone graphic, right, on a cool product compared to maybe a standard imprint. So, just be aware that, having differentiated art content, is going to allow you to really deliver upon that. So in conclusion, Graphics Builder is like 4 collections. This is all retail inspired content. So the stuff that's actually, selling, that's popular, that's trending, that's in style. So again, if you are in need of professional graphic content and you don't want to illustrate from scratch, you don't want to, you want to gain some efficiencies there, I would certainly go to digitalartsolutions.com and check out Graphics Builder, where you can also download a sample kit. But we are going to make a special offer available after our Q&A together. Alrighty, folks. Well, that concludes today's webinar. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop recording and I'm going to turn to the Q&A function in the Zoom control panel. So if you have any questions about any of the subject matter, even if you have a suggestion that you think the rest of our community who's participating today should be aware of, maybe an insight that I missed. This was my first webinar on this topic, and typically it takes a few webinars to kind of refine, introduce all the sort of topics and themes. So if you have a question, please share that question. If you have a comment or you'd like to share an observation, maybe you have experience that's germane here, please make that on offer as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click the stop record function.